Hello, everybody. It's Laura Eisenhower. I am joined today by my good friend, George H. Lewis, master astrologer, artist, author, and musician. I mean, just sound healer. Oh, my goodness. And look at you. You look like you're on a desert island. And
I know. I've just new backdrop. Obviously, I'm not, but I'm sort of celebrating North Node in Pisces here, and even the fan is blowing wind in my hair, so it looks very authentic. And it's
yeah,
amazing what
well,
AI can do.
I love it. I love it. Oh, my gosh. So we're going to dive into this full moon coming up in Libra. And I want to hear your take on that. The Sun conjunct Chiron with the square to Mars, and any other alignments that you can think of that are happening currently that you want to give voice to. So take it away. I want to hear what you got to say.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting one because right now, obviously, Sun is what 21 degrees Aries sitting on Chiron, well, next door to 22 degrees Aries. That's a big one. But it's gonna, Chiron, for me, Chiron always has a Piscean feel to it anyway when we take it to that high vibe of consciousness. And so we've still got the North Node loosely, well, it's out of sign now, but conjoined Neptune. And then we've got the North Node conjunct Mercury in Pisces, Saturn very close behind. So we've still got this Piscean feel. And so I feel, in some ways, how I'm looking at it is a bit of a turning point with the North Node. We're understanding the concept of singularity, where we're realizing it's a bit of a problem. Those negative entities that have promoted singularity on our planet, they haven't got human consciousness. They're not on the side of our biological uh, way of life. And the merging, for example, the human with the technological, the technocratic, is something which we're beginning to really understand has been on the menu for a long time. And so I think in some ways it's this return to the biological. And I was re-listening to the telepathy tapes the other day, and Veda Austin has just had a great interview. The great conscious water lady. She was interviewed by Pam Gregory, and I think, wow, and you're learning about the psychic realm and just how it's almost like the telepathy is like the mycelium of the trees. When we can connect into that field, we raise our consciousness, and I think that's what the North Node in Mercury communicating is really going to be about now. Is just like we really can do it. It's not something woo-woo. It's something which maybe a mystic did in the cave of Peru. Actually, we the people have this opportunity to step into higher frequency.
Oh, yes.
What do you think?
I love it. Yeah. Well, um, okay, so the retrograde, right? Mercury's still
Yeah.
in retrograde. I believe Venus
Yeah.
is still in retrograde. And I mean, I'm really feeling everything that you're saying about or actually Mercury
Mercury's just gone direct, but it's
just
not out
gone
of its
direct.
shadow. But it's not going to be out of its shadow for another few weeks.
Right. Okay. Yeah, totally. So, I mean, I really feel with Venus being the ruler of Libra, when we talk about, this full moon in Libra and how, Venus in retrograde is, taking us very inward and things related to love. In Pisces, it's much more, about the mystical, about our heart, our compassionate heart, finding structure though with that. How much is our energy leaking? How much are we absorbing and empathing? And I feel like, the full moon in Libra is going to help us to tap into the scales and reflect upon the sun Chiron with the square to Mars. Where are we maybe still people pleasing? What is the shadow side of Libra that is out of balance? Um, so that we can really look at maybe the wounds of the ego where there's a bit of fear or negative ego, or you need to give all your power away, or uh, like make everybody else happy at the detriment of yourself. What are those wounds? And it's going to be different for everybody. And my cat is just making a lot of noise. Hello, Luna. Um, so I think also those that aren't ready to really look at it in a transparent way, there's going to be a lot of eruption, a lot of aggression. We're seeing in the world as people are really awakening. Those that resist it, there's a lot of fighting and violence and protests, and just the inability to really be in the higher octave of this Venus North Node Pisces and this Neptune, which is about to move into Aries. So as we're about to move into the Aries and Mars square Sun Chiron in Aries is being amplified, are people able to step into the more compassionate disposition, the more multidimensionally aware, the more creative, instead of retaliating based in, what you're uncomfortable with? Can you take a step back and take a breath and begin to dig a little bit deeper instead of just be reactive, triggered, or in victim consciousness that you have a lot of confidence in waving to people, which they did a lot in social media and a lot of the different tactics of who's the bigger victim, and be proud of that instead of, what's being offered in this growth period, stepping into, the Neptune, like you're talking about, where the dogma and the religious belief systems are going to begin to crumble, and you can begin to see, wow, everybody's got a viewpoint. Everybody deserves to be heard. And let's just not be a product of this divide and conquer, and be sucked into, like you said, the technological without the spiritual development that will help to influence it in a beautiful and positive direction. Because otherwise, you're just grabbing onto the social engineering tactics and the different subliminals and the different psyops and false flag events that are, keeping you, in the shadow side of all these amazing aspects that are currently taking place. What do you think?
Yeah, no, totally. I mean, with that Mars square too, it's really giving us a choice to, we're either going to go in that lower three chakra of fight, flight, anger, bouncing off every newsreel that comes in. And of course, there's so much we don't understand. It's very Neptunian. I mean, I get sent so much stuff daily about Trump doing this, in particular Musk doing that. And I just take a breath. And this is the Mars squaring the Chiron. I have faith. I really do have faith that something is monumental, and it's part of this consciousness expansion that we are all returning to, and an involvement in our lives. You see, we were so passive as a species. I speak for myself. We were so, a decade ago, giving our power away to the doctor, the politician, the teacher. And it's this self-mastery, this independence. And that's that Aries we've just gone through North Node for the last 18, 19 months. And now we're in the Pisces. And obviously we've now got the activation of Aries right now. So it's asking us, in a sense, to not go into the fear of Mars. It's asking us to become the warrior in terms of the pioneer towards spirit, towards self-mastery, towards locality, as opposed to old train of just hating the other. I mean, whether it's the Middle East politics, because the whole thing is so corrupted on both sides that we're really in consciousness, we're raising up above it. We're seeing the manipulation. I mean, I don't want to get too specific in this one, but even the Middle East, when people are trying to take the side of one side, one's got to realize that, for example, the Hamas invention was created by the alphabet agencies. And once we understand that truth, we can go to a level and look down and see, right, the whole system has to collapse because of the corruption and the lack of spirituality, the lack of integrity, the lack of love. And I think at this stage in our evolutionary history and consciousness, it's about us working really hard on the local level and being able to control what we can control, and loving kindly and being authentic in our creative joy.
So beautifully expressed. I love that. Sorry, my animals are just whining and making some weird noises. Yeah, no, I feel that so much. And the thing is, with that shadow side of Aries, it's very much, it's a leader, it's a warrior, but aren't we tired of fighting? Aren't we tired of aggression? Aren't we tired of just being in these unconscious wounds that don't allow us to recognize the healing path that's opened up for us? And like you were saying before, the dependency on these different power structures in our world keeps us in a place where our body's going to continue to produce symptoms that we're going to keep treating externally with pharmaceuticals for a lot of people, with righteous anger for some that are done playing this game, that can be channeled into action of, what do you want to do to make the world a better place? What can you do to bring about peace and justice that the full moon is amplifying? Where are you when you feel the intensity of those scales? How much is that lower Mars energy being funneled into institutions that are going to leverage that, take advantage of it, or medicate you without you actually looking at the true source of it? Is it ancestral patterns? Is it a programming that your body actually wants to reject? Is it judgment? Is it, hatred? Is it all the lower aspects? And when we, can really look at that and find balance between those polarities and integrate them, we find that Mars finds balance, finds, justice, within the self where you might be willing to move on that healing path, which means you might break up with a partner that's no longer good for you with that Libra full moon. Say goodbye to that doctor that you have a
Yeah.
gut feeling isn't really treating you. Or say bye to that career that is asking you to step out of integrity to follow a narrative. And
Yeah, I
same
mean,
thing with what you're receiving in the news. Like this is, like you said, stepping into the sovereignty is everything.
I think it's also really interesting what you're saying with this full moon, because it is a very, very Venusian full moon in the sense that, yes, as you said, Venus rules Libra, and the full moon is going to tomorrow and the next day or the day after be in Libra during the full moon. But Venus is exalted in Pisces. So Venus is really playing a strong part in the collective psyche right now for all of us. But she's conjunct Saturn. And so that's the hard knock. That's the Lord of Karma. That's the restriction on Venus. It's almost like a double whammy, a double dosage, isn't it, Laura, of Venusian reflection. Meaning, we're not only reflecting full moon style on our relationships and retrograde style full, we're looking actually at Saturn, the Lord of Karma. These hard relationships that keep us in a vice have to be released. And we've all got our personal stories of that. And I have Scorpio in the fourth house. So I'm still quite private about my family life, but they're very close people who personally, who are close to me, but we don't have that functioning, loving relationship reflected in the 3D right now because of differences of opinion on whatever it's the jab, the COVID, the whole narrative. And we've all had to come to terms with that in different ways. In some ways, we've all got the same story, but it's uniquely expressed in our own individual lives. And I think the Venus-Saturn conjunction now, which is going to play out because of the retrograde cycle for, another week or so, plus, actually, some of you guys are probably doing the exact math. It may be even up to another 2 weeks. We'll see. It's like, okay, it's going to feel pretty hard unless we release some of those old relationships and take a breath and lean into the soul family, which you and I are an example of. I mean, I've been following you, as you know, for years, but we've only reconnected in properly in the last year or so, and I think that's true of so many of us, that it's we find soul family, don't we?
Yes, absolutely. And gosh, when you think about Mars being in, the sign of Cancer,
Yes.
uh, and this square, um, Venus could help us with the boundary to how much do we want to engage in,
Mm.
the triggers that come up when we don't think the same way, with family members, with partners, with what we consider our sense of security. How much are we defending it? How much are we fighting for it? How much do we feel a victim to a sense of security that we haven't found within, where we need the validation or we need other people to agree with where we're at. So Saturn can serve as like a boundary, or it can, kind of, create an insecurity or an energy block or a feeling of frustration instead of the self-mastery that you're talking about. And I think it's a really great opportunity to look at some of those wounds and redirect it towards you can find your soul family. You can
Mm.
still love family members that don't agree. We're all going to eventually get there. But how can we best, direct that energy? And I think Mars forming harmonious aspects with the nodes and also with Uranus, people will be like, you know what? I can be me and I can be solid in that, regardless of what anybody else thinks. And then the Venus Saturn, I can have self mastery over my heart and still be a being of love and compassion without being in the line of fire to a lot of maybe insult or lack of emotional intelligence with the way things are communicated. And I think, Mercury beginning to go direct and Venus helping us to contemplate and establish that, our words are going to be a lot more aligned with our integrity and our acceptance of things.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting talking about sextiles, because I mean, right now as we speak live, the moon, 28 degrees Virgo, making a sextile with Mars, 27, 28 degrees Cancer, making a sextile with Uranus, 25, 26 degrees Taurus, making a sextile with the North Node in Pisces. I mean, it's kind of fascinating. And the sextile suggests it's not easy work like the trine, but with a little bit of imagination and creativity, I always feel is the key word with sextiles. Houston, we have liftoff. And in that sense, Venus is more dominant than Mars, in the sense of Venus is exalted, Mars is not in his fall, but he's not in the sign he likes. And furthermore, Saturn is slightly weak in Pisces. So I feel the Venusian quality, if we really soften the ego and go into love and true relationships, things will work out quite nicely. And if we all do that, war will cease to exist.
Absolutely. And it really breaks down the energetic cords, right? When you
Mm.
suffer because somebody doesn't understand you, you're almost energetically corded in, and it validates them more than you, because it's like, well, look, you're struggling. So how can you possibly know what you're talking about? Because there's, angst or frustration. And I'm not saying that's always going to be the perception, but it certainly doesn't have a breakthrough. When you're shining your light, when you're living your truth, you're leading by example. And it's more than likely going to get their attention of, wow, okay, they're thriving. What are they doing? Because, maybe the path that they're on, that they're defending their captors, they're defending enslavement, they don't even realize it, is not taking them into a higher vibration. And if you can hold that vibration, they're going to probably turn their attention in that direction, more likely than, the wounded ego that just feels like you have to save people and wake them up, or you're going to leave them behind. They'll get there, but be the shining example, be that balance, and it'll reverberate. It'll send energy back to them, not in an energetic cord, but in an activation instead of an absorption or a frustration.
Yeah, and then the other thing to maybe contemplate on is, I mean, even though Neptune's right at the beginning of Aries, I mean, it's on the creator degree, it's on the venal, the world axis, it's powerful. And it's interesting, Neptune went into Aries on April Fool's Day. We're sweeping away some of those delusions. I mean, Neptune in Pisces, which it's been in for the last 12 plus years, has been highly deceptive. On the one hand, it's been, for people on the spiritual path, the great magnifier of spiritual mystical understanding and wisdom development. But on a lower frequency, for most human beings, it's created a lot of separation and delusion and addiction and stuff and suicidal feelings. And we have to really, I say this a lot, and I think you and I have talked about this privately, is the next decade plus is going to be spent helping heal people, healing ourselves and healing other people from the trauma that we've all experienced. And
Exactly.
light workers, especially the people who part of our communities, the way showers. This is our job, and I think with the Neptune in Aries is stepping into that Aries martial, because it's ruled by Mars. Mars rules Aries. That martial quality would then almost like the archetype of Archangel Michael. It's for me, Archangel Michael is Neptune in Aries. It's the sense of the warrior. I like the word pioneer, not being afraid of the fight for light, the fight, the drive, determination towards consciousness and love through action.
Yes.
And I think that Aries energy is very beautiful when it's expressed nicely. And I think we have the ability for all of us in our local ways to step into that power.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, I love it. And with all this Neptune and Pisces turning the unconscious conscious, so that you really, understand where triggers come from, where victimhood comes from, where the lower Neptune deceives you, self-undoing, self-deception, allowing deceptive energies to create belief systems that your body isn't thriving in. That's why the South Node Virgo, connecting into our physiology and our physical body. What are the symptoms? Can we really look at that? Because the Mars square Chiron is going to say, the wounded warrior or the wounded healer, when it comes to your self-identity, are you unconscious to the roots of it? Are you, looking for something outside of yourself, or are you taking that discomfort and moving in a direction that helps you gain self-knowledge, helps you move into the higher octave of Neptune, the creative imagination, your ability to take action and manifest your visions and dreams. And that's really when we cut ourselves off from the dependency bond that awaits us. You don't have to just see reality that's projected onto you, that you participate in because you think it's real. You get to create your own story. You might still have to participate, but you don't have to be so energetically corded into it that it takes away the power that you're awakening to, the right use of power, without the compartmentalized ego, but the one that is a vehicle, which is, Neptune, Saturn, and Aries, going to help us to establish with building structure, with having the structure of our physical vessel be able to contain the multidimensional.
Yeah, I mean, the Pisces. I mean, I have 3 planets in Pisces. The Piscean in me It makes me think of sound and frequency, of course. It makes me think of the laws of harmonics and the music of the spheres, to quote Pythagoras, and those spirals. I'm going to sound quite Piscean now. Those spirals of sacred geometry, which, quite frankly, underlie quantum mechanics. We're learning, rediscovering this with the pyramids and all the revelations that are coming out. That the seed of all creation in the universe is the fundamental nature of harmony and harmonics. The simple harmonic structure is intended for many beautiful purposes. It's there for us to step into that, to co-create with it. And when we do that, the toroidal field opens up and something really incredible happens on the physiological, but also on the spiritual level. I mean, I look at it in terms of the elements, and of course, they're even more than four, but let's stick with the four. Fire is spirit, mind is air, water is emotions, and the physical is the earth. Disease finally rests in earth, and it comes out, people call it cancer. But ultimately, it starts in the fire spiritual realm. When we start to play the flute of the harmonics of the spine and all those beautiful integrations of the elements, then we start to heal. And so the North Node with Saturn there, structure, putting new structure down into the Piscean creative spiritual healing. And the Neptune, which has now moved into Aries, is the action into the Aries of doing it. That's how I'm looking at it.
Absolutely. Yeah. And instead of, the Neptune that's been siphoned and harvested because it's louche, because it's depression, because it's victimhood, because it's a fear response based on a mind virus or a programming, the things that just cause that energy to just be like taken and harvested to, create artificial timelines, and where the sacred geometries have been messed with, where there's been recoding, and where the hertz, that come through, music is not at 432 or 528. Where frequency modulations and distortions have infected our creative channels to the point where, we're not being that vessel that you're talking about, that's embodied, that is tuning the instrument of ourself in order to offset the things that have fallen into distortion. And when we do that, we override the distorted frequency, and we begin to, help with the planetary grid repair work. We begin to dismantle the dark weaponry and where it's invaded our body, our physiology, the parasites in our gut, the things that have really invaded the body on every level. So, frequency is everything. We are frequency. And what frequency are we putting out there? Because if it's in the lower frequency, that is where, Cancer comes from. And when we look at Cancer, the fourth house in the house of mother, the mitochondrial DNA has been damaged in our nucleic acids of our DNA, which is earth, air, fire, water, and the ether connecting to mitochondrial DNA. When it's damaged, we have this epidemic of cancer. And so that house of Cancer, if you have mother wounds, if you're not processing emotion and releasing emotion, if that inner feminine is suppressed and it's not given a voice, and you're not bringing it out of exile to be in harmony and integration with the inner masculine, yes, I feel that is very much the root of things like Cancer, and why maybe they both have the same name. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. In some ways, you're sounding like some of the information I've sort of read and studied in the Law of One. That, it's almost like the upward spiraling that we can create of manifestation. It goes through our DNA and it unlocks our DNA, doesn't it? And it creates a new potential. And I do think I love the what's it called, the Hermetic principle: as above, so below, so within, so without, as within. Sorry, as the universe, so the soul. That's the final bit: as the universe, so the soul. And this journey work we do. And so our solar system is going into higher realms. We know this on the physical level because it's going through a new part of the photonic belt or something. And so that's why the sun is a different color to when we were children. It's much more white now, and that's why they've sprayed it more to suppress the consciousness or to delay it. And I think now we're burning off the evil veil. The veil is coming down, and the Piscean is becoming, even as we leave the age of Pisces, it's almost like we're beginning to realize that we've been in this psyop, this matrix illusion for so long. And now we have this ability for all of us to come out of it.
I know. And in that, we come together, we activate one
Yeah.
another, we realize, diversity and harmony is oneness. And that's where we, unify. We accept, our differences in where we are on the path too. You might be further ahead in some areas and somebody in others. How can we harmonize this and see through the programming so we're talking to each other's soul instead of the judgments of you're not there yet, or oh my gosh, you're woo woo, or you're crazy for thinking that this is, can we put all that down and
Yeah.
connect with the heart to have the real conversations and the real exchanges, that pull the best of us out, and instead of battling, these things that are collapsing, or that we don't have to force upon one another. We don't have expect people to wake up too soon, and they don't need to process it all, and they can take a step back from the judgments and just say, I'm going to have an open mind soon enough. Maybe there's things that I don't know. Maybe I'm not ready for it yet, but let's honor one another no matter where we are. And there's no higher or lower, really. It's just a different, speed in which your system, your soul is ready to fully step up and anchor in your physical vessel to be heard, and blast down that mind control, and understand that physical symptoms are going to guide you there. It's going to help you get to know yourself better, and at least make that a part of the healing journey, is to get to know thyself.
Yeah.
While you might seek assistance, don't forget to leave yourself out of the equation and get to the root of why this is happening to you, because it will show you your mission, your purpose, and where the pain is also your purpose to be on that Mars square Sun Chiron. Maybe that discomfort is guiding you exactly where you need to be.
Yeah, one of the things, I mean, because obviously we both have a lot of client work, patients, in private practice, and I definitely feel that there are a lot of people who are more on the empathic scale side, and they're wishing to leave old relationships, but they're nervous too. And I'm always saying, just try and step over the threshold onto the hero's journey, because you'll, even if it feels uncomfortable, there'll be some lack to begin with. You're going to go towards soul family that much quicker. And once you go towards soul family, they're going to have your back, aren't they? More. I mean, like I find that with all of us, there is no subterfuge in the same way. We're more transparent, and we're just meeting everyone where they are. It's much easier. It's much more gentle. It's kinder. It's more loving. And that's why I study and teach the archetypes, because the Cancerian archetype is going to do it differently to the archetype of the Aries or even Pisces, which is another water sign. It's still different from Cancer and different again from Scorpio. And once we understand the complexity and the beautiful and the kaleidoscopic range of expressions of human creativity, then you say, oh my gosh, Johnny's doing it that way, Hillary's doing it that way. How wonderful, as opposed to the fear that we should all be doing it the same, which is part of the programming. As long as we're not doing, baby eating satanic ritual, quite frankly,
Right.
let Johnny be Johnny. And I think, and there we find the freedom, you see.
Oh, totally. And we all have our own unique charts,
Yeah.
right? We might have predominance of water energy. Somebody else that we're with might have a predominance of earth energy. We might have a little bit of all of it, scattered throughout our zodiac, but you came in with a unique blueprint,
Yeah.
and for us to be in this sort of unified field, can we allow each other to fully be ourselves? We can nudge each other. We can be a resource. We can say certain things that might plant a seed. We can, listen to where a person's at, and hold space and make suggestions, and but ultimately we're all activating each other no matter at what level or stage we're at. And some people are just holding um ground to eventually be a bridge, to be in this, matrix still, while some kind of act as the bridge and some are already on the other side. And if we can all get along, we'll realize that we all have an important part to play. Let's just not close ourselves off of each other, or we miss out on the incredible opportunity, without trying to turn somebody into somebody they're not. But it's more the blending. It's like the frequency you said, and allowing it to touch one another to create a spark of inspiration, or that seed that might take a little while to open itself up and show itself. But if that exchange is there, um, and when to kind of withdraw before it gets ugly, then love rules instead of I'm right, you're wrong. And I think that the harmonics behind the tone that we share with one another, will keep us from fragmenting and being in more conquer and divide across the
Yeah.
board.
And the other thing is, with the Piscean Aries combination, maybe it is a battle, Aries, of the soul, Pisces. And this is in some ways what the age of Pisces has been about, certainly in the era in which we're emerging, from which we're emerging. You know, I was listening to Barbara Marcinek, as I do. I subscribe to some of her stuff still, and you know, she was mentioning the other day depopulation, infertility, you know, people going broke. People are under some real heavy spells. I mean, this has been mass, and you speak brilliantly about this, the massive manipulation of consciousness. You know, these massive belief systems have been targeted brilliantly, quite frankly. And I think she was mentioning about the advertising way back from the 1950s and how it's been so advanced and sophisticated. None of us really knew quite how sophisticated this system has been until relatively recently. I speak for myself. You know, we're not all David Icke here. But this, you know, the subliminally embedded messages in all the pictures and symbols, we're beginning to realize. And we're dealing, obviously, with the fallout of this confusion, this deception, and this Neptune now into Aries for the first time in 15 years, and certainly for 165 years since the last time it was in Aries, which of course was the advent of the Civil War here in the United States. But the difference is this time is we've got all these lovely, delicious sextiles and trines. We don't have all the squares from the 1860s, where we went into full-on conflagration, war. This time, no. The media may want to spin it that way. We're going to go into 1,000 years of peace, and we are basically exposing the deception. And you and I, in our modest way, we're showing that, and we're all doing the work, and we have to get on the train. It's exciting. This has been a spell against consciousness and the soul, as Prince said it very eloquently. It's a battle of the soul. We're realizing that, so we're stepping into our own sovereignty and spiritual journey work.
Oh, yes. And I love, you know, Mercury being the ruler of Virgo, where the South Node is. How is your mind talking to your body? And when you begin to break down the mind control, the social engineering, and all this, you know, these infections of the mind, the viruses that hold a frequency, what the body can't alchemize and process because the mind is reinforcing it in a biofeedback loop because it's attached to a programming or a psyop or a belief system connected to what we see in the news and how we should manage something that we can actually alchemize and begin to dissolve, and turn it into, you know, a transformation. So, you know, the key being, how are you talking to your body? What is unconsciously there? And with so much emphasis on Neptune and that Aries, now Aries is not so compartmentalized, but as it begins to open up to it and the body is responding, can you unlock these, you know, physical symptoms? Can you begin to reconnect your mind with all that's possible for you to be able to undo the damage of bioweapons, of mind control, of decisions you might have made out of fear, out of thinking that you were doing the right thing? That's not all doom and gloom, no matter what people tell you. The minute your mind begins to dismantle it, now it's talking to the body differently, and the body can work wonders and heal. I truly believe that.
Yeah, I mean, so much of it is going to be about the journey towards healing. And some people call it the biohacking of the body, but also the biohacking of the spiritual body, and understanding that I mean, water for me is such a big thing. I am obsessed with water and the ability of water to heal us. And if you start with proper, good, ancient spring water, and then you start blessing it and creating, you know, toroidal fields and spirals in it, you really are starting to lubricate yourself in a way that and reduce inflammation in a massive way. And obviously we have to eat well, and this is going to be what's coming down the pipeline for all of us, humanity, over the coming years.
Totally. And it just reminds me of, you know, with Virgo having so much to do with the stomach and Mercury, uh, digesting. What are we digesting? What are we allowing into our system that we're digesting? And is it making us sick or is it making us healthier? And I love that about, you know, water, because the emotions being made of so much water, you know, and how frequency affects the vibration of water. It's so much that, and you do so much of that, you know, kind of work. And with Neptune in your fifth house with the ocean behind you, your ocean art is just so profound. And I got to see it in person. And but yeah, oh gosh, does what we can tap into with Neptune and how much that place has been infected has to go through that, you know, purification, filtration, of the higher mind to cleanse where the lower mind has become completely corded into, the ways we talk to ourselves and enable the very futures we do not need to co-create.
The other thing also I feel with Neptune is it's like everyone is a singer, everyone is a musician. None of this nonsense. You have to go to, you know, Juilliard or Oxford to get a degree in music to qualify. That's nonsense matrix. Go and tone, go and hum, go and chant in the bath or in the shower or in the forest. It does something to the body. It does something to the soul, especially if you're barefoot. And I've just done 2 days of this in the forest of Arkansas, and I'm feeling pretty high.
That's so great. And George and I were going to go on a road trip, and just so happens that the timing is not quite yet, but we look forward to doing that. And um, and another thing too, I mean, I've witnessed my father going from, chemo, pneumonia, leukemia to being restored just by not having such a rigid mindset. And there's so much
Yes.
more possible than we can imagine. And
That's very
yeah,
powerful.
so
That's very powerful what you've said. He's healed through not having such a rigid mindset. Big lesson for all of us in that. And you've experienced that with a close family member. How wonderful. That's the Pluto in Aquarius, which we're all going to continue to experience until the mid 2040s or early 2040s, is we have to reduce and actually get rid of the fixed, rigid mindset.
totally. And the aspects are just, calling for it. And every single moment is an opportunity to, heal and release yourself and, step into the wholeness and fullness of all that you came here to be. And anything, less than that is there to observe, is there to feel it, to heal it, is there to, unlock your greater potential, instead of allow it to overtake you to the point where you wear it like it's yours. These afflictions and these diseases are opportunities, not something to, carry around with you like you own it. Look at it as a key that you're unlocking to get to the root of it and then call yourself back and come home.
Beautiful. Yeah. I mean, it's in some ways, maybe the North Node in Pisces is dignity in our own humanity.
Yeah, I love that. Oh man, we could just keep talking and talking. And I think we'll end on this note. And my mom's calling, so I know I have to take it. But it's always amazing to be with you,
Darling, I
George.
love
Have
it.
a wonderful trip.
I always love our chin wags.
I
Such fun.
know it is. Have a wonderful rest of your trip, and I can't wait till we hit the road and journey together. And thanks everybody for tuning in. Have a happy full moon.
Bye.
Bye.